Hello, my name is Audrey Kirby, and I am doing my critical lens presentation on Alan Sinfield's critique of The Merchant of Venice. Sinfield's critique is titled How to Read The Merchant of Venice Without Being Heterosexist. He introduces the idea that Bassanio and Antonio had a mutual romantic attraction towards each other in subtext within the play. He states that the play makes best sense if we regard Antonio as being in love with Bassanio. He also suggests exploring other structures within the play. I believe that Sinfield's critique falls best under gender criticism. Gender criticism is defined as the type of criticism that examines how sexual identity influences the creation and reception of literary works. It was originated during the feminist movement and is often used to explore feminist views within a piece of literature. However, it does not just focus on women, but also the construction of gender and sexuality, which is seen within Sinfield's critique of The Merchant of Venice. I looked into the historical views on homosexuality after reading Sinfield's critique, because he stated that the only oppositions on homosexuality during the time were the issue of buying and owning property, maintaining population by obviously marrying a childbearing woman, and the regulations of lineage. So is this to say that nobody objected to homosexuality for religious reasons? And through my research, I found that there's not a lot of documented instances of homosexuality during the 17th century. And I found an article by Alan Bray that he stated it was largely unrecognized or ignored by everybody in society and the involved parties. He also reported that within 66 years, there was only 4 instances reported, and those were mainly due to also including some violence. When I reread The Merchant of Venice after reading Sinfield's critique, I tried to focus in on elements that would have made it seem like they had more of a friendship versus a romantic relationship, and also elements that maybe seemed like they had more of a romance, which you'll see on the next slide. So one reason I lean more towards a friendship is because they didn't have anything physical between them. There was one instance when Bassanio was leaving for Belmont, and it quotes, "And even there, his eye being big with tears, turning his face, he put his hand behind him, and with affection wondrous sensible he wrung Bassanio's hand, and so they parted." Now, Sinfield tried to argue that in this specific quote, it showed their immense feelings for each other. But it only seemed as if they either shook hands or held hands for a minute. There was nothing really romantic about that to me. And during this time period, in many other works, it would portray friends who would put their own life on the line in order to save their friend. And that wasn't anything romantic. That was just being a good friend. There were 2 elements that made me lean more towards a romantic relationship versus friendship. One of them, Sinfield points out that Portia was aware of a relationship between Bassanio and the young doctor. And the quote is, "Let not that doctor ever come near my house, since he hath got the jewel that I loved, and that which you did swear to keep for me." And Sinfield points out that jewel was often translated to mean genitals in Shakespeare. And the other instance was when it appeared that Antonio was going to get a pound of his flesh cut out for Bassanio. And so he began to speak to him, and he said, "Commend me to your honorable wife. Tell her the process of Antonio's end. Say how I loved you. Speak me fair in death. And when the tale is told, bid her be judge whether Bassanio had not once a love repent, but you, that you shall lose your friend, and he repents not that he pays your debt for it. If the Jew cut deep enough, I'll pay it instantly with all my heart. Then Bassanio says, Antonio, I am married to a wife, which is as dear to me as life itself. But life itself, my wife, and all the world are not with me esteemed above thy life. I would lose all, yea, sacrifice them, all here to this devil to deliver you. Another element that Seinfeld brought up was how in Shakespearean performances, boys were used to portray women. And he quoted, it was because they were less dangerous, they were erotic, but that was less threatening than the eroticism of women. So could this have some impact on homosexuality during this time, such as the cross-dressing, maybe taking acting a little seriously? Shakespeare blurs the lines of gender in many of his plays. For one instance, in The Twelfth Night, the Duke is deeply attracted to a female-like young man, but it's actually a woman disguised as a man, which is also seen in The Merchant of Venice when Portia and Nerissa cross-dress and disguise themselves as male law clerks. I believe that he wrote this way to appeal to many different people, which is why he was so popular, because many of his readers and viewers could relate to his works. Here is my personal take on Seinfeld's critique. And the question I leave you with is, do you believe this questionable relationship between Bassanio and Antonio was written to be romantic, or simply left open-ended for viewers or readers to make their own assumptions?